All right, hey guys, Wilson here, and I wanted to take you through this training that we made for you on how to create a seven-figure trades business. This is the exact four-step process, four-phase process that we use to help people get very quickly to six figures and then well on into seven figures. The stuff I'm going to be teaching you here, this is not rocket science in any way, shape, or form, nor is this theory. This is what we have done to create seven-figure businesses. And this is a duplicatable process. Now, I do want to put a caveat here. You have to know how to work your way through the phases, and you need to know what to implement and when to implement it. But as a grand scheme, once you have the information, it's not that hard. The challenge is getting the information and getting the timing right. Now, a lot of times when I see trainings like this, it's like, and if you wait to the end, I'll show you the secret. I'll show you the secret right now. This is the secret, okay? The secret to a seven-figure business is really mastering these three ideas. Client acquisition. If you're going to do seven figures in business, you have to have at least enough people willing to pay you that it sums up to about $83,000 a month, okay? You need to have a delivery that is so good and duplicatable, not only can people that aren't you do it, because here's the truth, you're not going to do $80,000 worth of work as a single person. I can just let that idea go right now. That's not real. So you have to have delivery systems that are consistent, sustainable, and scalable. And most importantly, give you good enough reviews and outcomes that people are going to continue to want to work with you, because we do live in the age of reviews. Everybody's a food critic on Yelp, right? Well, everybody's a critic on Google Plus, and everybody's a critic on Facebook. So your work has to be above reproach. And lastly, you need scalable systems. You need things that aren't fully and 100% dependent on humans doing everything, because if that's the case, way too much stuff is going to fall through the cracks. And in all honesty, I think the first and most important thing that you focus on is client acquisition. And let me show you why that is. Because when you look at people starting a business, and actually we'll go straight into it, right? So when you're going to launch, you're going to dive into your business, you're going to say, hey, I'm ready to do my own thing. And oftentimes the reason this happens is, you're working for somebody else in the trades, you see the size of the check that they collected, and you go, well, I just did all that work, right? He just collected a $5,000 check. I only got paid $1,500. I know materials were only like $1,000. So what, this fat cat is just pocketing all the rest of that money? And the answer is sometimes, right? But that fat cat is also taking all the risk. And so a lot of people get excited about how much money they're going to make, but then they go to launch their business and they find out it's not quite that easy. I talked to a guy that literally did this exact thing, and I was asking him, it's like, well, so how long have you been in business for yourself? He said, well, it's been about 8 years now. I said, awesome. Well, are you making the fat cat money that you anticipated? He said, well, no, I'm not. It didn't work out quite that well. And you wonder why he wasn't? I'll show you. Because if you look at it, okay, and let's just make this really easy spreadsheet. Let's look at a solo operator, okay? If you were charging as a one-man operation $3,500, let's just say for your average weekly revenue. For us, like, we do cabinet refinishing, that's our thing. Our typical job is going to be between $3,500 to $4,500 when you're first starting. My shop, we probably average about $5,300 is our average job. My partner Steven's shop, his average is probably like closer to $6,100, $6,200. But if you're a one-man operator and you're doing $3,500 per week in revenue, you don't have labor, and you had 35% overhead expenses. So you profit 65% of that. If you do 4 jobs a month or 1 job a week, you did $14,000 in revenue, $9,000 in profit, right? The problem is, when most contractors start, they're not doing 1 job a week. In fact, there are lots of contractors that are 3-4 years down the road that aren't doing 1 job a week. They're doing a job every other week, right? And unfortunately, that brings your profit down to like $4,000 a month. But in reality, because they don't have a job every week, they're bidding lower because they really need to get the job. And so in actuality, they're profiting like $3,900 a month. And at the end of the year, they're upset because their bills were $3,500 a month. They profited $3,900 a month, which means they only made $400 a month extra. And they didn't have any money to reinvest back into their business. So the question is, why does that happen? And how do we avoid it? And the way that you avoid it is you begin with the end in mind. So when we want to start a business, what the end looks like? The end looks like this. Okay? The end looks like us being able to make $1 million a year in revenue. And the way we make $1 million a year in revenue is we have to make $80,000 a month. Now, this adds up literally the revenue and profit of every crew that you would have to have in order to make this reality. Okay? So, for ease of use and for a simple example, I know that that means I need to be able to charge about $5,500 on average per week per crew, running a 65% profit margin on work that I do and a 40% profit margin on the work that my crews do. Okay? So, let's look at what that means. If I have 4 crews, crew 1, crew 2, crew 3, crew 4, and those are my averages, I'm literally making $88,000 a month, and I'm profiting a minimum of $26,000 a month. Let's take home. Okay? And honestly, for take home, that is not bad. Not bad at all. Now, something that I think is really important to keep in mind. Not everybody's goal is to get to 7 figures. Okay? If your goal is not to get to 7 figures, you probably only need to watch about half of this. All right? It really, I mean, the rest of it's not going to be necessary for you. But if you are not currently, like at this very moment in time, if you are not currently breaking 6 figures, stick around. Okay? Because we can show you exactly how to do that, and I can show you how to break 6 figures as a one-man operation. The reason most people don't, more than anything else, why is this not working? 88. This number is wrong. Hey guys, I want to fix this in real time. I was looking at that number and I thought to myself, that just doesn't seem right based on everything I've seen. Yeah, there we go. That's why. It's not right. I didn't do that number. So, if you're profiting $88,000, like if your revenue is $88,000, I expect you to be taking home about $35,000. And just for you guys that are wondering, $35,000 a month, this is your total yearly profit. Okay? That is what you profit as a business. Now, whether or not you want to pay yourself as the owner all of that money is an entirely different conversation and one to have for another time. But I can tell you, if your choice of problems is having too much money or not having enough, having too much money is a very good problem to have. So again, begin with the end in the mind. That's the end we want to get to. So in order to get there, the first thing we have to figure out is how do we at least get to this point? How do we get to the point where we, as a solo operator, are able to keep our time fully booked up in a profitable manner? So we're not undercutting jobs, so we're not, giving away work for free, whatever the case may be. And in the trades, this should be easier than most other markets because the trades have less developed competition. You look at the number of things that real estate agents do, for example, in their marketing, and you compare that to what the average contractor is doing, real estate agents are light years ahead of contractors. The other wild thing about it is there's way more competition in real estate than there is in the world of contracting. So if real estate agents can figure out, there's no reason at all that contractors can't. The problem is that contractors are great at their trade. They're not oftentimes great at the business. They spent all this time becoming a master of their skill set, but they haven't treated business with that same level of dedication. And so they struggle with it, right? A lot of times contractors are a little bit older, which means they're stuck in their ways, they're not as computer savvy, and the reality is high demand and low competition does attract low quality competitors. right? I had a guy I was talking to a few weeks ago, and he's like, yeah, man, I just feel like I can't charge anything because, these guys come in and they just want money for beer and cigarettes, and so they undercut me. Okay, maybe that happens. I'm not saying that it doesn't. But the reality is there is such high demand that those people can come in. That means that there is a shortage of people doing the work. And here's what I want to point out. There is a shortage, right? If you're struggling in your business, it is not because of your competition. Competition is no excuse for barely scraping by in the trades. And you know how I know that? It's because if you pick up your phone and you go to Google right now and you type in trades shortage America, you will see that there are not enough tradespeople in the United States. If you're struggling because you're running your business poorly. That's it. And that may not be fun to hear. And that's okay. If you haven't started yet, there's some really good news. You can skip that whole part and learn how to run the business right from the beginning. If you are struggling right now, you can just say, okay, I know that I'm struggling. I know that there's a shortage. So if that's the case, why am I not getting the business? And you can make the necessary changes to go get the business. It's really straightforward. This is the question you have to answer. Okay? When people are struggling, it's because they haven't figured this one out. What's the first thing you need for your business to make money? Right? Like if you're going to throw away whatever business you have right now. Let's say you wanted to start a new business. And your new business was, I don't know, selling high-end water bottles. That's your new business, selling high-end water bottles. If your new business is selling high-end water bottles, what's the first thing you need for that business to make money? Most people say things like, oh, I need a supplier, or, I need a designer to design the water bottle. It's like, no. You need somebody willing to buy the freaking bottle. That's it. If you get somebody that says they're willing to buy the bottle, you can go get the model made, right? There's an entire business model just for that. It's called Kickstarter. You don't have to have the product. You just need somebody willing to pay you for that product. The trades is the same way. The number one thing you need is someone willing to pay you, and preferably to pay you a good wage. So we go back to this chart, right? If you're charging $3,500 a month for the same service, right? That means you profit $9,000 as a solo operator. But I'm over here charging $5,500 a month. I made $15,000. Which one of us is happier at the end of the month? I mean, listen, money is not the only way to happiness, right? But given the choice between having problems and being wealthy or having problems and struggling, it's better to have problems with money than to have problems without. Okay? That's it. So, knowing this about the trades has actually caused a lot of people to go into it. This is John. When John was thinking about starting his trades business, he literally called 5 contractors in his area. Only 2 actually called him back, right? And what he said to me is, he's like, man, after I talked to these guys, I realized one of 2 things happened. Either these guys were so busy that they did not give a shit about me, or they were so bad at what they do that I'm going to literally blow them out of the water. And John went out like a banshee. He's made over $30,000 a month since he started. Now, some of that is the business model, yes, right? But also a lot of it is due to the fact that the trades right now has a massive shortage. There is more demand than supply, okay? And so if you're operating in an area that has more demand than supply, but you're struggling, it's typically one of 3 things, right? Either you lack professionalism. So, guys not showing up on time, right? None of your stuff is branded. You don't have a logo. My God, you don't have a website. If you're listening to this and you do not have a website, comment below, reach out to us, we can help you. Like, you should have a website. I, as a consumer, if I'm considering working with somebody and I go and I see they don't have a website, I ain't gonna work with them. Flat out, not gonna do it. I'm not going to take the risk unless my grandma is the one that referred them to me. I'm not gonna do it. Because if you can't take the time to even just put up a website, right? How do I know that you're gonna be here long term? And I really don't want somebody to come in and fix my house and something go wrong and me never be able to contact them again. It's a small thing, but people look for it, right? They spend all their time on what we call the sales delivery seesaw, right? So they go out, they make a bunch of sales, they've got all this work to do, and they get so busy they don't do anything with their client acquisition. And so then all of a sudden the work gets done, they realize, oh my God, I don't have any customers. So what do? They go out and they do as many bids as they can, and they give out all these low bids to try and get a job right now. Then all those bids come through way underpriced, and they start the cycle over again. Or they're struggling because they don't know anything about business, and they're trying to reinvent the freaking wheel. It's something worth saying here. Listen, there's two ways to solve a problem, right? You can be the person that discovers the solution, or you can be the person that implements the solution. Now, there's value in being a person that discovers a solution if a solution does not already exist. If you're the first person to solve a problem ever, hell yeah, man, you're probably going to get a Nobel Prize, right? But if you're the 15th person to solve a problem that's already been solved, nobody cares. That's like coming in 10th place in a race. Like, congratulations, you get a participation medal, and I know how contractors feel about participation trophies, right? Like, it doesn't make any sense. There's no point in trying to reinvent what already exists. The first thing you need to master is client acquisition, and I want to be very clear about this. This is an ecosystem. The way you go from a struggling contractor that's doing 2-3 jobs a month to doing literally as many jobs as your calendar can allow is by mastering this process. Having a good website, having good nurturing campaigns, having a good solid sales process. Like, if your job, if you're a self-employed entrepreneur, right? Like, if your job is to get new business so you can deliver on that business, your job is sales. If part of your job is sales and you've never done any sales training, that's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous concept. Because if I told the average contractor I was going to go install a roof but I'd never done any training on how to work on a roof, they'd be like, dude, you're going to die, right? At least you're going to screw somebody's house up. But they're okay with doing that with sales. It doesn't make any sense, right? You have to treat every part of this cycle with the same level of dedication that you treat the completion of your work, the execution of your craft. Like, if you view yourself as an artisan in the actual work you do as a tradesperson, you need to learn how to view yourself as an artisan in the work you do as a business owner. The first step is client acquisition, okay? Now, I like to break this down into the two parts I think most people need to focus on, which is lead generation, which you need to look at the consistency, quality, and price of the leads, right? Consistency is they have to be regular, okay? If you have regular leads, you can start to sell yourself out into the future, right? Which means you can start to charge more for your prices, okay? Second thing is quality, because we do have time constraints as a business owner. And the way we really maximize quality of our leads is twofold. One, it's the source that we choose. Two, it's our process for actually doing it. And the last thing is you have to know the price of the leads, most specifically your price for client acquisition, right? How are you getting an ROI? If I'm paying $1,000 for a lead and I close 1 in 4, my average lead cost is $4,000. If I'm charging $5,500, there's not much profit margin there, right? And so I have to be able to break those numbers down. Next is you have to have a legitimate sales process for handling those leads. You need to be able to nurture the leads. They need to know who you are before you get to the house for the first appointment. You have to have a legitimate, consistent sales process so you know what you're doing, so you know what's working and what's not. You have to have a follow-up system. You have to have a follow-up system. You can't talk to somebody one time and assume everything's going to work out. Most people, when they figure at least some of that out, right, they're able to go out on their own and they can survive. If you want to get to where you can do well as a one-man operator, you move into phase 2. Phase 2 is what we call stabilize. And I want to be honest, when we start a business, we lap phase 1 and phase 2 in together. Right? Like, if I'm starting my own business, I'm starting with all the systems I need for my business to be stable. It's like McDonald's approach, right? McDonald's doesn't start a business and then 3 months into it go, hey, should we market this McDonald's? Do you think we should run commercials? Like, no, dude, they were running commercials before they even opened the damn thing, right? And so this is an important thing to recognize. I like to have these systems in place, but if you're at the point where you're, getting some jobs and move to the next level, starts with the client acquisition, then you move into stabilization. Stabilization is where most contractors get stuck, which is part of the reason why they struggle to grow. And some of the primary reasons for this is, one, they struggle with money. A lot of contractors don't have the systems in place to track their money, so they don't know what's working and what's not working. They've got inconsistency with their work and also inconsistency in the work that they're doing on a day-to-day basis, right? Are they spending their time chasing leads, or are they spending their time touching up problems that exist, right? Are they spending their time developing new systems for their business? Are they spending time researching the new best drill of 2022, which, by the way, as a fun joke, if you go onto YouTube and you type in business help for contractors or business tip for contractors, the number one video has 1/10 as many views as if you type in best drill of 2022. You know why that is? Because of lack of prioritization. And it's crazy. It is absolutely crazy the degree to which this happens. And so the prioritization is usually about how time is spent. And I'll give you a hint. The number one priority for you as a business owner should be revenue and client acquisition. That should be number one, okay? And a lot of times, because they don't have this, they spend, again, all this time trying to solve problems that already exist. It goes back to that idea of reinventing the wheel. And so a great way of understanding it, like a good analogy is like this. Imagine, right, when you look at a race, what's more important, the car or the driver? And if we got any NASCAR fans out there or Indy 500 fans, a lot of times people have their favorite driver. It's all about the driver, and most people actually bet on the driver. But the reality is that only works in those racing leagues, because in almost every other situation, not everybody gets the same vehicle. And if you think about your business as the vehicle and you, the business owner, as the driver, right? You're responsible for building your vehicle while you're driving it. Most people have never built a vehicle before. Like, imagine if before you could learn how to drive, you actually had to build your own car. Most people would end up with some crap like this where their car actually has a boat engine, right? Or they would forget something like a pretty small part. Like, I forgot one really tiny part. It's like, oh, what'd you forget? And you're like, brakes, right? The grand scheme of things, not a big part. Is it an important part? Yes, it's very important, right? And so the reality is you can't win Formula One with a boat engine, okay? Now, this leads into what we call the Specialist Delusion. And it's this idea that if I am really good at what I do, I will make a lot of money. And the reality is being good at what you do means that you have the potential to make a lot of money. But sadly, profits and passion are not the same thing. Just because you love something, just because you're good at something, doesn't mean you're going to be good at making money at that thing. In fact, if you don't believe me, we talked about McDonald's just a second ago. If you have ever been to McDonald's, did you ever walk out of McDonald's and think to yourself, holy shit, that was the best burger I've ever had? But the reality is, if you think about it really hard, you probably know somebody who's an incredibly talented chef, but doesn't make a dime doing it, right? Or they're barely making ends meet. I know lots of people that are incredibly passionate, incredibly talented, but they're not making any money at their passion, because passion does not equal profits, right? Because a lot of times most people don't know what they would need to do in order to turn the passion into a profit. They don't understand all the pieces that go into it, the technology that's required, right? Having the right CRMs, project management tools, finance, accounting, marketing, sales, delivery, customer support. All of those parts require a solution, right? And the part that is the passion, 9 out of 10 times, is the delivery, right? It's just a small piece of the entire puzzle. Now, is it an important piece? Yes. And if that piece outshines everything else and the rest are the same, like if you have the same sales as another company but your delivery is far better, are you going to blow them out of the water? Hell yeah, right? But if you don't have any kind of sales system but you're the best at what you do, odds are you'll be the best kept secret. And that's not a good place to be, especially if you're trying to make money. So the moral of the story is, don't be this guy, right? You are going to work yourself to death if you think that just because you're great at a skill, your business is going to suddenly take off and drive like a champ. That's not how the world works. Now, if you master those two parts, right, And what I mean by that is you get to where you have good systems in place around you, you have good marketing, you have good sales systems, you have good operational systems, you got all your nurturers, and you have the budgets to be able to reinvest back into growing your business. A lot of business owners as solo operators get to the point where they're making, anywhere between $120,000 to $200,000 a year. We have seen plenty of guys that are able to consistently do $20,000 a month as solo operators. Okay? And if you're doing $20,000 a month solo operator and you're doing a 65% profit margin, like you're clearing just shy of $180,000 a year. That's nothing to scoff at. Okay? That's a good living, right? But it can be better. And the way it gets better is by solving the next problem, which is phase 3. This is where growth and scaling happens. And this is where, again, I would say most successful contractors get stuck here, right? I would say most successful self-employed individuals are really here because this is probably the hardest phase to overcome, right? One, you have to have significantly more lead flow. Like this is not the level of your business where you can rely on word of mouth typically, right? People struggle with unreliable workers. And in my experience, when people are complaining about unreliable workers, and don't get me wrong, obviously there are people out there that suck, but more often than not, the reason they complain that workers are unreliable is because they've created an unreliable environment and they can't attract reliable people. For example, if you can't guarantee somebody's going to have work every single week for the whole year, odds are they're not going to stay with you. The person that will stay with you is the guy that is okay with the flexibility, right? Because he's typically not as good as the other person, right? It's not that the only workers out there are unreliable. It's the only workers that you can attract unreliable. And the way you solve that is through scalable, duplicatable systems that enable you to, 1, charge more, to 2, create consistency without you having to be the one to do it, and then 3, to buy your time back so you can invest in other ways of growing the business. In order to do that, you then have to develop yourself as a leader. And this is challenging for a lot of people, right? But it requires that you invest in yourself and you figure that out, right? To scale quickly, you need to perform 5-star work efficiently. So that's how you go from right here to right here. And what this transition looks like for most people, right? What we like to do is we say, okay, cool. If you're doing 4 jobs a month by yourself, average job is $5,500. What we want to show you how to do is how to hire somebody and train them. And during training, you do 2 jobs by yourself and they do 4 jobs with you. So you're working double for sure, right? But what that means is that during that time, they are paying for themselves, right? So you're working a bunch extra, but you're getting somebody that soon will be able to work functionally 100% on their own, right? And once that person can work on their own, right, you guys are double dipping, you're then going to bring on your next person, okay? And if you have 2 crews that are working full time, that's enough to replace any work that you would have done, and you have now pulled yourself completely out of the delivery of that business. Should you still have your finger on the pulse? Yes. Are you still a project manager? Yes. Do you need to pick up a paintbrush or a nail gun or whatever the trade is? No, you don't, because you've got people now doing that for you. But to do that quickly, you have to efficiently perform 5-star quality work. And 5-star quality work is not just the delivery, it's the entire customer experience. One of the biggest challenges we hear when it comes to tradesmen, right? Customers complain about lack of people skills, poor communication, and doing great work is not the same as creating a 5-star experience. Your customers need to feel heard. They need to know what's going on. They need to have constant updates. Like they need to feel like it's a 5-star experience, okay? And so in order to learn how to do a 5-star experience, there's one of 2 ways, in our opinion, to do it. The first is trial by error, right? Trial and error, right? So basically you screw up until you figure it out. Or the second is you invest, right? You invest in hiring credible marketers. You invest in business coaches to guide you through it. You invest in talented new people that you can bring in that will help your organization be better than it was previously. Again, going back to the CADS model, the caveat here is the scalable systems, right? You need to create systems that people can plug into and come in and win. And really, once you figure this part out, phase 3 growth is where things happen fast. Now for us, since we like to do phase 1 and 2 all together, the way our process typically looks is like, I'll give you an example in the Austin location, right? We started right out of the gates doing 4 jobs a month. We brought somebody on, right? Then we were doing about 6 jobs a month. So we spent about a month and a half training that person, and they were doing jobs themselves, 1 job a week. We were doing 1 job a week, so that was a total of 6 a month for the next 4 months. And then the month 7, what we did is we started looking for our next hire. Month 8, we started training that hire. And by month 9, that person was out doing again. And so now we have 2 crews going, right? Which is kind of cool because that means by month 9, right, we've now got a pretty high revenue. I think for us, we were bringing in probably, I think at that time our average job was probably closer to $4,500 by about month 9, right? So we're bringing about $36,000 a month, 9 months into the freaking business, okay? And what's cool is a lot of that profit you can reinvest back into the business, reinvest it back into marketing, into advertising, into coaching, right? And then you rinse, wash, and repeat, right? After a couple months of them working by themselves, you bring on the next crew. Okay, now you've got crew number 3 hopping on. And what's interesting is like, this is by yourself, right? This is with your first group. This is with your second group. This is with your third group. When you have 3 crews going, you can literally do about $55,000 a month if your average crew brings in $4,500 a week in revenue. And that's not crazy. That's not crazy at all, especially in the trades. There's a lot of high dollar trades out there, right? The challenge with that is if you have 3 crews going, for example, how do you make sure that you know exactly where every job's at each time? Not only do you need a project management system, right, going back to these scalable systems, but you need SOPs for that project management system to actually then place it. And here's where it gets really fun, right? When you get to where you've got 3 or 4 crews going, you're now making enough money without you doing the work that you can start to hire out and replace yourself into the other roles, right? So if you have 4 crews going at $4,500 per crew per week, you're making $72,000 revenue every month. That's 20. That number is wrong again. No, that's right. Yeah, okay, cool. So that's $28,000. $28,000 that you made in profit. So that means you can hire a manager for $6,000 a month, and you can hire an admin for about $2,800 a month. So $3,000 a year. The admin can take over all of your office stuff. Your manager can take over your sales and project management. And you are now making $20,000 a month on a business that runs itself 100% of the way, right? And you can do this. We have done this in 2 years. For example, recently, so about 2 years ago, Steven bought a company called Espresso Cabinets in Tampa. And when he bought Espresso, they were doing probably about $15,000 a month. And by the end of month 9 of that year, Steven had them, that was their first month where they broke $60,000. And the way they did that was their average job out there got closer to about $5,500, so they upped the prices. And again, with just 3 crews, you can hit $60,000 a month. So it took them less than a year to get the business to where they broke their first $83,000 a month, which again is the 7-figure mark. Most of the time it takes people several years just in those first 2 phases, but it doesn't have to. Again, when you start with all of those systems in place, it makes it much easier. And so, summing it all up, right? The long and the short of it is this. You can get to 7 figures very quickly, but the secret to 7 figures is going to be right here. First, for the first 2 phases, you have to master client acquisition. That's your leads, right? It's your sales process, it's your follow-up, it's your nurturing, okay? You have to be able to create systems that are duplicatable and scalable for your delivery so that you can then hire and place and replace yourself out. And then you need the technology to support that so that you can put other people in charge of it and eventually step out of your business. And that is exactly how you get, in less than 2 years, to a 7-figure business. So hopefully that made sense. As a quick bonus for you guys, one of the things that I think is really good to look at is, look, success leaves clues. Okay, if you're really on that quest for freedom and you want to get there, like these are all things that have to be done, right? The list is long: lead nurturing, sales presentations, follow-up nurturing, accounting, project management, administrative, hiring being the biggest challenge that people face. The easiest way to solve all of that, to get all of these systems in place, is to follow what other champions are doing, right? And here's the thing: you look at any champion of any sport. Tiger Woods has a coach, right? Oprah has 12 coaches. It's crazy to think, 'cause you're like, Oprah, she's a billionaire, she's got all this stuff. 12 coaches, right? Every person, Tony Robbins has mentors, okay? Every top performer in their field has a coach or a mentor. You have to know what to do. Knowledge is power. And you have to have an action plan to implement that, right? And whether your coach is, books written by famous people, or whether your coach is, paying $1 million a year for Tony Robbins, it really doesn't matter. What matters is that instead of reinventing the wheel, you go find someone that's already done it so you can sift through the noise and avoid costly mistakes, right? You want to have accountability so you can stay focused on the right goals, right? Improve your follow through. For like easy example, hiring. If you don't know what you're doing with hiring, it can be really easy to bring somebody on, not ever do quarterly reviews, and keep somebody that sucks for a year when you should have had them for 2 months. If you have an expert looking over your shoulder saying, hey man, don't do that, guess what? You'll save 8 months worth of time not working with somebody that literally sucks money out of your business. And that's part of the reason all the people we've worked with, like, okay, Noah here, great example. Noah is 25 now and has had a business that's producing over 6 figures for the last 2 years, right? Charles, when he started his business, again, we showed him how to do phase 1 and phase 2 right out of the gates. Charles did $30,000 basically his first month. First job ever, right? First appointment, actually, $4,500 job. Pretty amazing. Charles now has multiple locations. Gary here does 6 figures every single month. He's been in business for just over 2 years. Okay? And there are so many examples and stories of people doing this exact same thing. All of these people are people we've helped through that exact same process, right? The reality is you have to have the systems in place and you follow that exact process. And so hopefully this has been really clear for you guys. If you have any questions or anything you're unsure about, go ahead and comment below and I will be happy to help you in any way that we can.